Welcome back. In the previous video, we took a major step in our programming career. We wrote our first for loop with Python. In this video, let's try a few puzzles to understand the for loop even further. So, the syntax of the for loop that we looked at earlier was for I in range. Which range? 1, 20, or let's say 1, 10. And we said a colon here, and we said you have to give a little bit of indentation and you can print I. So this is what we used, and I pressed an enter again to end the for loop, right? So we saw that it's printing 1 to 9. We said 10 is exclusive, so it's not included. So that's why it's only printing up to 9. That's the basics we learned in the previous step. Now let's try a few other things in this specific video. Now, if let's say I execute for loop and I don't give a colon here, what would happen? There's no colon after the range function call. What would happen? In Python, this is invalid syntax. Colon is a mandatory thing in the syntax of a for loop. Let's say I give the colon and I do a print directly here. So I'm not leaving a space at the start. I'm directly doing a print I. Let's press enter now. Oops. What does it say? It says indentation error. It's expecting a indented block. Some of the other programming languages use open brace and close brace as delimiters. However, Python uses indentation to identify which code is part of a for loop. So if I'm executing for loop, then I have to use indentation. I have to leave at least a single space, and then I would say print I. And you'd see that this line alone is now part of the for loop. It's executed as part of the for loop. Now, let's say I would want to execute 2 lines of code as part of my for loop. How do I do that? So I can say print I and again a space, and I'll say print 2 star I. So I'm saying print I, print 2 star I, right? Let's see what would happen. Press enter, enter again. Now you can see 1, 2 into 1, 2, 2 into 2, 3, 2 into 3, and so on, printed to the console. So what is happening is these 2 lines of code would be part of the for loop. So the for loop is executing both these lines of code for each value of I. For I is equal to 1, these 2 lines are executed. For I is equal to 2, these 2 lines are executed. You can try having 3 or 4 or any number of lines as part of your for loop. One of the things you can also do for a for loop is for I in range 2, 5. Let's say I'm starting with 2, I'm ending at 4. I can print the value of I directly in here. So in a for loop, if you have only one statement to execute, then you can do this as well. So you can say print I. What would happen? Press enter twice, you would see that this code executes. However, this is not considered to be a good practice. Typically, this is the kind of code you would see. So even though you want to execute just one statement in a for loop, you would use print comma I. So this is typically how the code is written. Another best practice which is typically followed is, until now we have been using only 2 spaces, but typically the best practice is to use 4 spaces. This would give clear indentation of the code. Anybody who looks at the code clearly understands that this print is part of the for loop. This is not just a for loop. Later we will talk about if blocks, a lot of conditional things. We'll talk about other loops. In all kind of loops and in all kinds of conditions, it's recommended to use 4 spaces to indicate that something is part of that specific loop. Until now, what we have done is we printed all values from 1 to 10, right? For I is range 1 to 11, print I. Let's say I only want to print the odd numbers. So I would want to print 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. How do I do that? The range function offers an option. You can say for I in range, we said 1, 11, you can have a third parameter, third argument called a step. So what happens is it starts with 1 and at each loop it increments it by 2. So 1 becomes 3, 3 becomes 5, 5 becomes 7, so on and so forth. So colon, print I. And now you'd see it prints 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9. This third argument over here is called a step. So this is the start, this is the end, and this is the step. So starting from start, each loop, the value is incremented by step. So 1, 1 plus 2, 3, 3 plus 2, 5 and so on until the end value 11 is reached. In this short video, we looked at a variety of puzzles with the for loop to understand it better. Until the next video, bye-bye.